today I did some little videos showing some of my small vessels for the couple of my collections, being the Dragonfly Industries, the Inspiration Traders. The Inspiration Traders at least had 3 small vessels for it, with one going through a refit. So I basically showed 4 vessels, one as it is, one it will be, another one that was in a work in progress, and then one that's as it is on the workshop and in its completed form. Sweet Lemons here. I'd like to show the Sweet Lemons. It currently only has 1 small vessel, hasn't even made it to the workshop. It's a work in progress. There will be at least 1 more. This stuff inspired by the Last Starfighter. I kind of like the fact that they, you had the cockpit at the top, but they landed on the in a vertical launch position. So, but some of the challenges will be with that is how do you actually get up to a cockpit like that. I have some ideas about that. Stuff. So, the alternative is to make it shorter, smaller, so the cockpit will be closer to the ground and do it that way. But I'd really like to do it, inspired by, it won't be the Last Starfighter, but when the gun stars, it'll be something a little different. Well, this is the one that's in the work in progress. A lot easier on the build because I'm not trying to do some sort of vertical landing. This is, I'm calling the Liberator. I had actually done a prototype and used it in my survival game, but I called the Liberator. It was about the premise of doing a vessel where you threw the warp drive into a starter vessel. So you had something that you could build with just the iron, copper, and silicon, and then after you acquire the tech and the materials, throwing in the warp drive. Up here in this spot I would put your mobile constructor and your fuel tank. The Liberator here, small, inexpensive. Yes, I was planning to put 6 Gatling guns on it. So this was my plans for the Liberator. The one I built in and used in my survival game didn't look like this. I really didn't like the way it looked, so I did basically took it back to the drawing board and came up with this. And I may want to make some changes to it yet, but so far it's for me a lot better than the original prototype. However, since it's only got the 1 small vessel, I figured with this video, rather than just show you 1 small vessel, I'd get to some of the hover vehicles for Sweet Lemons. They're probably going to have a fairer selection here. We have the 2 hover racers that I've already submitted on the workshop, the Little Racer and the Racing Bike. They both have the yellow and red color theme here, and the Little Racer, it's got due to its sheer small size, it ends up with some decent yaw and fairly good stats, but that's mostly just from the sheer small size of it. So its performance comes from being small. The Racing Bike, even though it's a little bit smaller, the fact that I'm just doing it on the hover, 2 hover engines, gives us a little bit of instability that way, and I don't end up with quite as many RCS snuck in here, so it has a little more difficulty, but it is again another light, small racing HV. Here is my little bike. I had built this at one point. I had built a blueprint, and I called it a bike, but it really wasn't a bike. It was really just a replacement for the bike in my game. I really didn't like the bike in the game because as cheap as it was, my problem was I would forget it and lose it, and it ended up costing me more because I'd have to make it again. So this is my after that, with the one that wasn't really a bike, I'm like, well, if I made one that wasn't really a bike, called it a bike, but then I gave it the appropriate name for it instead of calling it a bike. So I'm like, well, why don't I make an actual bike? So this has just the 2 hover engines, some RCS, thrusters in the directions. It's a fairly basic, inexpensive hover vehicle. Probably my cheapest one. Over here is the Ant. In fact, this is the Ant Custom. The basic Ant that I have on the workshop doesn't have, this area is just completely open. Doesn't have any storage containers. The basic Ant, the premise is being a truck that you simply fill in and customize as desired by not having it all pre-built. If necessary, I could throw a few extra fuel tanks in there in that space, throw a bunch of refrigerators, and then you'd have a refrigerator truck with extra fuel tanks for a longer running time. However, most of the games I use the Ant, and I was using it long before I actually put it on the workshop. I would throw in a full 16 of the large cargo boxes, giving it a lot of storage. With the side docking, I would just dock it right onto the side of my capital vessel, and just using my basic starting capital vessel, suddenly I have 16 extra boxes of large storage boxes, other cargo boxes, and it was a very versatile. I finally finished it up, got it on the workshop stuff. This one here I'm calling the Wrath. It's just not speaking to me quite yet. I think I'm going to end up making this a little bit longer. We'll see what happens. The intention is to have it only this wide, to be my narrowest of these more assault hover vehicles. I don't want to make it a whole lot bigger. It is supposed to be kind of small. That was the intention of it. But my first the concept actually starts with an enhanced defense hover vessel, and when I took it against a point of interest, at least at that time, it was actually decent against a point of interest. Not the ultimate in light tanks, but with 4 Gatling, 4 minigun turrets, 6 Gatling guns, and the 4 rocket turrets, it actually did all right. Well, I decided I wanted to kind of solve it's kind of hard to totally solve the issue I had with it, but the problem I had with it, it was wide, and so going through a forest area, I was crashing into a fair bit of trees. It was so the idea was to make this just a tad bit narrower, so I might be able to fit through wooded areas just a tad better. So I might, again, it's not quite speaking to me. It's mostly this back end that's really bothering me. So I'm probably going to make it a block or 2 longer, and then try to change the shape of the back in the process, and see if that'll speak to me and finish that up. This here is the Worker. This is essentially the Ant, completely modified. It looks significantly different, yet it is based on the same basic model. I just made some changes here. One of the things I did with this is I decided I would do 2 cockpits. One you have here for doing your drilling operations, and the other one, you just drive it like a truck. And that is the Worker. At one point I was going to call it the Worker Ant, but I decided it just works better just to call it the worker. Oh yes, this one. I was having some issues with this one, I remember. I may have to rebuild this one from scratch. I don't know what was the problem with spawning it in here. We will take a quick, let's see if it'll actually, oh, quitting the game, coming back. I fixed that. So now in this video, you got me to see I fixed one of the flaws with this. There must have been, used to be something else here. I'm going to have to review what was there and how it's supposed to be. Yeah. I know the armament here is exactly what it's supposed to be. I may just have to figure out what that's. This is the Enforcer. This here is a little hover vessel in the same vein as the mini nymph and the small vessel, the Hawk Talon, from a couple of my other collections. Each collection was supposed to get one of these tiny hover vessels, fit in roughly the space of two large blocks. But on these dimensions here, you will notice that it is only 3 by 3. The idea is that that tiny little savings in space over the large blocks would allow me to fit this thing in hallways. I have taken it for a bit of a test run inside of a base. The 3 Gatling guns that I have more direct control over, and then the minigun turret allowing to act as a partial point defense and ventures inside a hostile point of interest. Okay, so the Enforcer, that needs a little, it's a work in progress, needs a little work fix up, kind of remember I was having some issues with it. Phantom blocks, essentially. I pulled out the cockpit, and it wouldn't let me put one back. Something was going on, some sort of phantom block issue. But it looks like I got that back there for now. The Trike, this is actually on the workshop. Originally this was in hardened steel, but at a certain point as I was playing my survival games where I would use the Trike always, it got to the point that I wasn't using it anymore. One of my other blueprints got to be what I would use, and it became my go-to, and it just didn't get used. So I rebuilt this with your basic steel, allowing it to function as a starting vessel, just using your iron, copper, and silicon. So now this thing can serve as a starting vessel, and I found that I now use it a bit more again, as I can bring it in and use it that way. It's designed as a point defense, so if I hit here in the control panel here, and I can just turn off maneuver, and that should turn off, if I've not mistaken, all the hover engines and thrusters, so the thing, it will conserve power and just sit there. Okay, so we've got the Enforcer, Wrathworker, Trike, Bike, let's show the Liberator, the small vessel over there. I think that pretty much covers everything except for, that's right, I remember. I am planning, I haven't done it yet, stuff, but now that I've been reading about the radar working for hover vessels and being a useful item, I was thinking that I would take a version and a means that I'd probably delegate the Trike to not being used much again. But in this case, I don't plan to get rid of the Trike. The Trike will hang around because it will be the source, and it uses an open cockpit, making it different. I was planning to rebuild a version of this where I used a closed cockpit. I'd probably end up stretching this into small portions, and then replacing one of these turrets with a radar and having a scout vessel for the game, a scout hover vessel. But that pretty much sums up all the currently planned hover vessels for Sweet Lemons, both those that are finished and those that are all works in progress. As you can see, a fair number of them are works in progress. And yeah, as far as these small vessels here, I did show you the Liberator. That I need to finish it up, get it to a point where I really like it. The companion small vessel that will be going with Sweet Lemons, so that they get a more advanced one in addition to the starter one. That one, I'm guessing, is probably going to be one of the, not necessarily maybe the last small vessel I do here in the game, but one of the later ones I'll do later on as I gain more skills, because some of the challenges I really want to solve with that, I think I'm going to have to be a little more skilled to really pull it off. As I said, I really want to do kind of like the gun stars in Last Starfighter, where the cockpit is towards the top, which means we're going to have to have a way in with that vessel that you can get from the ground level up while it's vertical. It'd be very easy if I was just trying to, well, it's still a challenge, but it would be a whole different area if I, mechanic to it, if I was designing it so that you went up just stairs up to a cockpit. In this case, I have to figure that the in-flight for the vessel will be much different than the landed. So somehow the stairs are going to have to work so they do not interfere in the different modes. So we'll just a little preview there. I'll finish this up. I have something else in mind I want to do tonight.